Hello and welcome to another episode of What If on HITC Football, where we look at how the footballing world could have changed if some key moments had gone differently. In our last episode, we had a look at what would have happened if Frank Lampard's goal against Germany in the 2010 World Cup had been given, and today we're going to look at another game involving Frank Lampard as we ask, what if Arjen Robben scored his penalty against Chelsea in the 2012 Champions League final? That final will undoubtedly go down as one of the most famous wins of all time, as Chelsea overcame Bayern Munich in their own backyard in a penalty shootout after a late Didier Drogba equaliser in normal time. However, the clock almost struck midnight on this Cinderella story in the 94th minute when Drogba himself gave away a penalty that would have gifted Bayern the trophy. Luckily for the Blues, Petr Cech was in goal, and as ever, he came to the rescue, and the rest, as they say, is history. But what if we change that history to a timeline where Robben converts from the spot? If the Dutch winger had been successful from 12 yards against the Blues, then Bayern Munich would have been crowned as the 2012 Champions League winners. Ultimately, Bayern Munich being crowned as champions that year would have led to Roberto Di Matteo never getting the permanent role at Chelsea after his spell as the caretaker manager. Let's be honest here, Roman Abramovich never really wanted to hire Di Matteo, but after an unlikely FA Cup and Champions League double, the Chelsea owner was backed into a corner and he was forced to make an appointment. Abramovich never ever rated Di Matteo. At the first possible opportunity, the Italian was sacked, and with the season already underway in 2012-13, no viable managerial options were out there, leaving Rafa Benitez to take over until the end of the season. But in this reality, Di Matteo isn't hired immediately after the Champions League final, and Chelsea dip into the managerial market much sooner. With Jose Mourinho preoccupied, who do the Blues go for around this time? Well, if we take a look at the managerial market in the summer of 2012, there are a few interesting options out there. Perhaps the most obvious choice would be to give Rafa Benitez himself the job on a permanent basis. After all, Abramovich did give him the interim role after Di Matteo, but given how unpopular that decision was, it's hard to imagine a permanent appointment going ahead. One name inevitably jumps out from this list, and that's Pep Guardiola, but he was dead set on taking a sabbatical after his time at Barcelona, spending a year in New York to get his head straight, so that one is out of the question. But there'll be more on Guardiola later. The former England manager Fabio Capello would be a very interesting option. He'd resigned as the England manager that summer due to the FA stripping John Terry of the captaincy, so he would have had the backing of the Chelsea skipper, while Ashley Cole and Frank Lampard, two more key players from Chelsea, they were also known admirers of the Italian at the time. However, in our view, there's one standout candidate, and that's Brendan Rodgers. The Swansea City boss was making waves over in Wales, and having been an ex-Chelsea coach under Mourinho, Abramovich knew exactly what he was about, and he may well have taken a punt on the Northern Irishman. So if Rodgers gets the Chelsea job, how would he have gotten on at Stamford Bridge? As good of a coach as Rodgers is, we can't imagine he'd have fared too well in this job. The Chelsea job around this time was something of a poisoned chalice. The likes of Terry, Lampard, Cole and Cech, who formed this sort of golden generation at Stamford Bridge, they were all coming towards the end of their prime years. And while he could have worked wonders with the likes of Eden Hazard and Juan Mata, it's hard to imagine Rodgers surviving more than 2 years under this ownership who loved to sack any manager at any given opportunity. Rodgers' sacking probably would have come just in time for Mourinho to actually make a triumphant return to Stamford Bridge around 2015. So if Rodgers takes the Chelsea job, who replaces Kenny Dalglish at Liverpool that summer? A return to Anfield for Rafa Benitez would surely have been speculated, but just 2 years after he was sacked, we can't see the Reds going back to him that quickly. No. Benitez wouldn't have been the one for Liverpool at this time. Instead, we think this would have been the prime opportunity to go out and get Marcelo Bielsa. Fresh off the back of 2 cup finals with Athletic Bilbao, Bielsa was the hottest of managerial properties in 2012, and a move to Anfield would have suited him to a T. Just think about why Bielsa clicked at Leeds. A northern club with a ravenous fan base, rooted in working class principles, a huge club that needed rekindling to bring it back to its glory days. Liverpool in 2012 were very similar to what Leeds United were in 2018, only on a bigger scale. Bielsa proved in the 2020s that his tactics can take the Premier League by storm, so just imagine what his high pressing system could have achieved before the likes of Jurgen Klopp, Mauricio Pochettino and Pep Guardiola arrived and influenced the Premier League. The results could have been staggering. Actually, this team would have been really well suited to Bielsa's style of play. An ageing Steven Gerrard would have been perfect as the quarterback in a 4-1-4-1 formation. Just imagine how Calvin Phillips played at Leeds, only better. Meanwhile, Bielsa could have been the perfect manager to unlock a young Jordan Henderson. As his role with Klopp has shown in recent years, he he's brilliant in an all-action pressing midfield, and while we don't like to tamper with potential signings too much in this series, it's hard to imagine that Bielsa wouldn't have been a little bit tempted to go out and get Ander Herrera from Bilbao to partner Henderson after a successful spell together in La Liga. On the wings, Felipe Coutinho would have been the perfect preamble to what we eventually saw from Rafinha at Leeds, only on the left side, while Raheem Sterling's pace and ability to beat a man would have made him a perfect traditional winger for Bielsa on the right, rather than the left-sided player that we're used to seeing today. Don't even get us started on how good the prime Luis Suarez would have been under Bielsa. If any player was born to play that high-octane, all-action, ultimate forward role, it's the Uruguayan. Rodgers, of course, came within 2 points of winning the league with Liverpool in 2013-14 with this exact squad, and we have reason to believe that Bielsa could go one better, but that point will become a little bit clearer at the end of the video. We've spoken enough about how Chelsea and Liverpool would be affected. Of course, the one team that would be most affected by Robben scoring his penalty would be Bayern Munich. Bayern would have finished as the 2012 Champions League winners, and just like in real life, we're tipping them to repeat the trick in 2013 and become the first ever back-to-back Champions League winners. With Bayern winning 2 in a row, would they really have had much reason to get rid of Jupp Heynckes at that point? Yes, we know age is a factor, but given that he would eventually return to Bayern in 2017, retirement clearly wasn't on his agenda at that point. And after winning back-to-back Champions Leagues with Bayern, the German had more than earned the right to bow out on his own terms, rather than being kicked to the curb to be replaced by Pep Guardiola that summer. So if Guardiola isn't going to Bayern, that leaves us with one last question. Where does Guardiola go at that point? The Manchester United job was of course about to become available in 2013, so perhaps Pep would have succeeded Alex Ferguson at Old Trafford. However, as we've said before, David Moyes was all but handpicked by Fergie in 2013, so Guardiola's going to have to go elsewhere. Fortunately for Pep, he won't be going too far from Old Trafford, as a move to Manchester City would likely have been on the cards at that point, 3 years before he actually headed to the Etihad. While City didn't actually get their hands on Pep until 2016, they were all geared up for his appointment by that time. His right-hand man from Barcelona, Tiki Bergestein, was already at the club, and the vacancy was already there after Roberto Mancini was sacked. So if Pep arrives at City 3 years ahead of schedule, what changes at the Etihad? In our reality, Manuel Pellegrini would get the job, and he would lead City to the title in his first season at the club. However, given how long it can take some players to adapt to Pep's complex system, we're actually not tipping City to win the 2013-14 title. Let's not forget, City won that title that season largely because of the contributions of Yaya Toure. The Ivorian midfielder netted no fewer than 20 league goals that season, but we can't see him repeating that trick under Pep Guardiola. The former Barcelona boss never really knew how to get the best out of Toure. He used him as a centre-back at Barcelona, and during their time together at City, they did have their issues. Guardiola is Guardiola, so he would eventually build one of the best club sides in the world at City. But in this timeline, we're actually tipping Liverpool, led by Luis Suarez and managed by Marcelo Bielsa, to beat Guardiola's City and Brendan Rodgers' Chelsea to the 2013-14 title. Let's face it, Rodgers is no Mourinho, and Guardiola's teams often have early teething problems in those first seasons, so we think that the door really could have been open for Bielsa's Liverpool, especially when you consider just how close they came under Rodgers that season in our reality. And there you have it. One converted penalty from Arjen Robben in a Champions League final may well have led to Brendan Rodgers moving to Chelsea, Marcelo Bielsa leading Liverpool to a Premier League title, and Pep Guardiola getting the City job years before he was supposed to arrive in Manchester. We could honestly talk about this one for hours. There are so many other changes that could have been made. Does Rodgers and Guardiola's influence at Chelsea and City give Moyes more of a chance at United? Does Jupp Heynckes remaining at Bayern Munich for longer lead to Jurgen Klopp staying at Borussia Dortmund? If not, where does Klopp go if Bielsa is at Liverpool? That Manchester United job would surely have come up sooner or later. There are so many threads to pull out here, so let us know your theories in the comments below. Tell us which what if you'd like us to have a look at next, and as always, like and subscribe for more content.